When I tell strangers I'm a minister, I generally get one of two responses. People tell me about their aunt who is active in a church and such a nice person. Or they tell me that they are spiritual but not religious. And I sympathize. Spiritual but not religious is an identity I claimed for myself for many years. My collection at home of drums, tarot cards, tree oracles, sacred objects, and neo-pagan books reveal the years of exploration as I tried to make sense of my own experience of being part of the greater whole. I wanted a deeper sense of being and belonging to the earth. Richard Wagamese says, the act of being spiritual is simply the act of allowing myself to feel my spirit move. It's just opening myself to living and allowing myself to absorb and be absorbed at the same time. Feeling my spirit move in response to the world, being absorbed into all that is. Sounds so simple and yet is so hard to reach. And I wanted that feeling of aliveness, that vivid emotional and physical and mental reaction to a vista revealed after a long hike, or to a song sung just so. And I have had spiritual experiences in my life, moments where I was intensely aware of being part of the whole, connected to all that is that great mystery. And those experiences that I had didn't have anything to do with religion as I knew it at the time. It didn't have any relation to the stories of Jesus or Buddha or to a sense of an all-powerful God. I was definitely spiritual, but not religious. And more than a quarter of Canadians today say they are spiritual but not religious. It's a growing segment of society, people seeking meaning but rejecting organized faith traditions. And it's a valid way to be in the world, to experience the sacred directly and make your own meaning out of your own experiences. The act of being spiritual is simply the act of allowing myself to feel my spirit move, just opening myself to living. And people find ways to express their spirituality in yoga, in meditation, and walking in nature, and that's enough. And they might find community in their walking group or as hockey parents. They don't need their spirituality to be communal. But I found over time, as someone who grew up without a religion, that I do in fact need a religion. It wasn't enough for me to experience those fleeting, beautiful moments of connection on my own, as much as I cherish them and they have shaped me. I also wanted a framework of meaning to guide me through life. And I felt this strongly once my son Silas was born. I wanted him and me to have a place where those big questions about life, the universe, and everything were asked. And I wanted him and me to know that life was bigger than just going to school or getting a job, that it includes oceans and foxes and distant planets and pine trees and holly berries, that all of it is alive and beautiful and we are part of that wondrous feeling whole. And I wanted a religious tradition that didn't ask me to believe what I did not believe, one that could integrate scientific knowledge, one that honored my own experiences and allowed me to come as I am with all my doubts and confusions. I had a friend who was attending a liberal Mennonite church, and when I spoke to her about my search, she invited me to join her. But I don't really believe Jesus was the Son of God, I said. That's okay, she answered. I don't either, and the minister is fine with that. Well, maybe he was, but I wasn't. I didn't want to pretend in order to be part of a community. I wanted a tradition that encompassed, even embraced my experiences that had nothing to do with the story of Jesus. And when I finally arrived at Unitarian Universalism, it was like winning at a slot machine where 3 apples turn up in a row and the bells start ringing. We have 6 sources, one of which counsels us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. Apple 1. Another source is the spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life. Apple 2. And our first source is direct experience of the transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Apple 3. And the bells began ringing. I felt that I could bring my whole self here, that rational, skeptical side of me that honors science, and that mystical side that knows humans are just one part of this marvelous thing called life. And part of what I cherish about Unitarian Universalism is that my particular spiritual orientation is not the only one welcome here. Our fourth principle affirms the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. My truths may not be your truths. People here believe in a loving God, invoke gods and goddesses. They're agnostics and atheists, Jesus lovers and Buddha followers. This spiritual independence is fundamental to our religion, and it makes us spiritual and religious. And I am forever grateful to have found a religious tradition that encourages us to find our own ways of allowing the Spirit to move, to open ourselves to living and find ourselves belonging to the whole. We pause now for a gift from the choir. I understand spirituality as our personal experiences of being alive and responsive to the world. Those moments of breathtaking, tear-inducing, deep peace connections to the living cosmos. And these experiences are available to anyone and may arrive unasked and unexpected, or may be cultivated through meditation and other practices. Religion is a little different. Religion is not curated spiritual practices on demand, but a framework for living, a guide to help us understand the cosmos and our role in it, our place in it, and how to live out that understanding. Religion helps us place ourselves in a meaningful context. The stories of religion vary from Jesus is our Savior to the dramatic panorama of Hindu gods and goddesses. And all of these stories illuminate our lives, lighting a path or just a general direction for us to follow. The stories connect people to one another and support them when they struggle, so that religion ends up creating a communal context for meaning and understanding. Spirituality is personal, that spirit, our own spirit responding to the greater whole, and religion can help us name and understand that personal experience, placing the particular into the universal. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't believe that we have found the one right way to live in the world, because there is no one right way to live in the world. There's no single story, there's no single truth, there's no answer. And this is where it gets tricky sometimes. The bell ringing of finding this religion, one that allows me to follow my own path, can also morph it into being a religion all about me, my freedom, my choices. Like one of our Canadian ancestors, Margaret Benedictson, who is part of the Icelandic Unitarian tradition in Manitoba, who once said, "I take my religion like I take my fish. I eat the meat, but leave the bones." And I know I am not the only UU who has read ahead in the hymns so that I don't sing anything I don't agree with. And there is joy and freedom in being part of that free-thinking community, to be sure, but it can have its shadow side. It's harder to go deep in a religious tradition that prides itself on theological openness. We are so reluctant to define what we hold in common, lest we exclude somebody. And yet when the shared theology is not apparent, the default connection becomes cultural. White, middle class, a little on the left. And we can conflate and mistake white culture for UU culture. My American colleague, the Reverend Cheryl Walker, speaks about her delight as finding Unitarian Universalism as an adult, a welcoming faith that allowed her in as an individual, giving her faith and freedom. But over time, she realized that Unitarian Universalism wasn't as welcoming as she had first experienced it, that the theological individualism created a focus on white culture, and Cheryl began to feel that she had to leave part of her identity as a Black woman at the door. Cheryl says, true community doesn't happen unless everyone is willing to give up some of their identity as an individual to take on the identity of the group. If that doesn't happen, then we are merely a group of individuals sharing a common space, but not becoming a community. It doesn't mean going to the extremes of the same clothing or praying the same or believing the same, but it does mean moving the focus from individualism to the concept of shared community, in which everyone gives up a little so that we all gain a lot. Everyone gives up a little so that we all gain a lot. I no longer read ahead in the hymnal, and not just because I'm the minister. I no longer read ahead because over the years I've realized that it doesn't matter if I agree with the words. I sing because we sing, because the words that don't mean anything to me may mean so much to somebody else, and that person should be able to hear them sung with the full power of our community, because it isn't just about me, it's about us. And that's why I've come to realize I'm spiritual and religious. I cherish my choices, my freedom to experience my spirituality on my own, in my own way and understanding. But I also need that community of meaning, and I need a tradition that provides a framework and people to help me be myself. And I need that community to be larger than just myself. I need a community that tells me stories that surprise me, that give me a fresh perspective, that take me out of my own narrow little focus into a shared life, into a greater whole. And I need to belong. Well, UU culture is, with good reason, embedded in white culture. We do come from the Protestant Reformation. It doesn't have to be. The principles and sources are bigger than one way of being in the world. Our theology is expansive and open, and yet it still has boundaries and a shape. It's rooted in the earth, in science and knowledge, and it rises open to the universe, to the divine, to the mystery. It looks like a chalice, ready to be filled by the beauty of each one of us and strong enough to hold all of us together. Chalice communities can be more than people sharing space. If we learn to let go a little, to trust shared wisdom, and let go of cultural norms to focus on the shared theology, we can make the shift from my way to the common way. And there's power there in the common way, in learning to live into the interdependence of all living things. May we each give up a little to gain a lot. May we all find belonging here in this chalice community. And may we continue to be spiritual and religious. So say we all.